The huge chamber was filled with angry voices and the sound of clicking claws on metal floors. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the center of the room, watching 12 different alien species argue about his people. The Galactic Council meeting had been going on for 3 hours and things were getting worse by the minute. Zethkara raised her insect-like arms high above her head. Her voice buzzed like 1,000 angry bees when she spoke. Humans are like a disease that spreads too fast across our galaxy. They take too much and they never follow the rules we made long before they came here. The crystal being called Velnoth made sounds like breaking glass when it agreed. These humans have put their colonies on 47 different worlds in just 200 years. Our laws say you can only take one new world every 50 years. They break this rule every single day. Captain Lisa Barnes stepped up next to Admiral Morrison. She held a small computer in her hands that showed all the records. We respect all of you, but we need to say something important. Every world we took was empty. No one else lived there. We followed every rule you gave us exactly as you wrote. Them. The snake-like creature from the Coil Empire moved its long body closer to them. Its eyes were bright yellow and very angry. That is exactly why we hate you humans so much. You do what our words say, but you ignore what we really mean. You find ways around our rules that we never thought about. Morrison had heard all these complaints before. The aliens were upset because humans were too good at finding solutions to problems. When the rules said they could not build on worlds with life, humans found worlds with no life. When the rules said they could not mine certain metals, humans found different metals that worked better. When the rules said they could not travel through some space areas, humans found new paths that no one had used before. The meeting room had representatives from every major alien group in the galaxy. There were the bug-like hive people who thought with one big shared mind. There were the crystal beings who talked by making musical sounds. There were snake people who could bend their bodies in impossible ways. There were blue-skinned giants who were 3 times taller than humans. There were small gray creatures with huge black eyes who were very smart but never showed feelings. All of them wanted the same thing. They wanted humans gone. We have made our decision, announced the head of the council. It was a floating ball of light that spoke without having a mouth. Humanity has 30 standard galactic days to leave every world outside their home system. Any human ship found beyond the Sol system after that time will be destroyed immediately. Morrison felt his heart sink, but he kept his face calm. Behind him, he heard Lisa Barnes take a sharp breath. 30 days to move 3 billion people from dozens of worlds back to Earth and the few colonies in their home system. It seemed impossible. You are making a big mistake, Morrison said quietly. Humans are part of this galaxy now. We help maintain your trade routes. We fix your broken machines. We share our medical knowledge. We protect your ships from pirates. If we leave, many things will stop working. The crystal being Velnoth made a sound like laughing, though it was hard to tell with crystal creatures. We managed perfectly well, for millions of years before humans arrived. We will manage perfectly well after you leave. Zethkara clicked her claws together in agreement. The galaxy was peaceful before your kind came here. Once you are gone, peace will return. Morrison looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. Some looked angry, some looked sad, but most looked determined. They had made up their minds and nothing he could say would change it. We will begin evacuation procedures immediately, Morrison said, but we want to make something very clear. When we leave, we take everything with us. Our technology, our knowledge, our help, everything. The blue giant representative laughed with a deep booming sound. Good. We do not want your things anyway. As Morrison and Barnes left the council chamber, they could hear the aliens celebrating behind them. They thought they had won a great victory. They thought the galaxy would be better without humans. Morrison pressed a button on his communication device. Get me Director Peter Walsh on a secure line right away. We need to start moving 3 billion people, and we have less than 30 days to do it. Barnes looked worried as they walked down the long hallway. Sir, how are we going to move that many people so quickly? We will find a way, Morrison replied. We always do. But I have a feeling these aliens are going to regret this decision very soon. As they reached their ship, Morrison looked back at the massive council building. Inside, 12 different alien species were planning for a future without humans. They thought they would be happier, safer, and more prosperous. They had no idea how wrong they were. The evacuation began within hours. Human ships started arriving at colonies across the galaxy to pick up people, equipment, and supplies. Families packed their belongings and said goodbye to homes they had built over generations. Scientists gathered their research. Engineers shut down the machines and systems they had spent decades perfecting. But as the humans prepared to leave, something else was already beginning to happen. On distant worlds, automated systems that humans had built and maintained for decades started to show the first signs of problems. Trade ships that relied on human-maintained navigation beacons got lost in space. Communication networks that humans had repaired and upgraded began to fail. The aliens celebrating in the council chamber had no idea that their victory was about to become their greatest nightmare. 3 months had passed since the last human ship left the outer colonies, and the galaxy was starting to fall apart. Dr. Amanda Foster sat in her secret laboratory, hidden inside a large asteroid near the edge of known space. Her team of 20 humans worked quietly, watching the chaos spread across the galaxy through stolen alien communication signals. The Hive Collective is having serious problems with their food production, Amanda announced to her team. She pointed at the glowing screens that showed graphs and numbers. Their crops are dying because they cannot make them grow without human genetic research. Food production is down by 40% and getting worse every week. Dr. Ryan Cole looked up from his computer station where he tracked economic data from across the galaxy. The problems are not just with food. The Trilarian Federation cannot make their factories work properly anymore. Their production has dropped by 60% because they do not understand how to use the improvements that humans made to their machines. Meanwhile, on the planet that used to be called New Terra, the aliens who had moved into the abandoned human cities were learning painful lessons about human technology. The machines that cleaned the air were breaking down. The power plants that humans had built were running at less than half power. The defensive shields that protected the planet from space debris had stopped working completely. Commander Elena Price watched all of this from her hidden observation post in the asteroid belt around the old human colony. She sent regular reports back to Earth about what was happening. The Zephyrian Alliance just lost their entire outer defense line to the Void Raiders, she reported during her daily communication with Earth. Without our early warning systems, they cannot see the pirates coming until it is too late. The Void Raiders were groups of space pirates who had been a small problem when humans patrolled the galaxy. Human ships had kept them under control with regular patrols and quick responses to attacks. But now that humans were gone, the pirates had become bold and dangerous. They attacked trade ships, raided colonies, and took whatever they wanted. Back on Earth, Director Nathan Brooks worked from a secret office deep underground. He coordinated with thousands of humans who had refused to leave their homes in alien space. These people had gone into hiding when the official evacuation happened. They lived in secret places and continued to maintain critical systems without the aliens knowing about it. "Sir," his assistant reported, "we are getting requests for help from 7 different alien species. They want to pay us 3 times the normal amount for what they call consultation services." Brooks smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Tell them we are thinking about their requests. But first, let us see how desperate they become." The galactic economy was crashing like a ship, falling from space. Banks were closing because the complex financial systems that humans had helped design were failing. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades were now dangerous and unreliable. Communication between distant worlds was becoming difficult as the networks broke down. On the crystal world of Crystallis Prime, Velnoth stood in the center of the main computation chamber, watching their greatest technology fail. The quantum computers that controlled everything on their world were operating at only 12% of normal capacity. The mathematical formulas that humans had developed were apparently much more important than anyone had realized. "We need the humans back," whispered one of the younger crystal beings. "Our systems are dying without their knowledge." Velnoth made a sound like cracking ice. "Never. We will find another way." But there was no other way. The Hive Collective had tried to use their own mathematicians to replace human innovations. But hive minds thought differently than humans. They could maintain existing systems, but they could not adapt them to new problems or create new solutions when unexpected things happened. The snake people of the Coil Empire were facing their own crisis. Their ships were getting lost in space because the navigation systems that humans had improved no longer worked properly. 3 major trade convoys had disappeared in the past month, taking billions of credits worth of goods with them. On the Yadu flew giant homeworld. Massive manufacturing plants sat silent and dark. The giants were strong and could build huge structures, but they could not understand the delicate electronic systems that humans had integrated into their factories. Without these systems, their production had nearly stopped. Captain Troy Martinez commanded one of the few official human ships still allowed in neutral space. His job was supposed to be diplomatic courier service, but he had become the most wanted transport pilot in the galaxy. Every day, aliens tried to hire him to carry secret messages or important people. Today his passenger was particularly interesting. Felnoth, the same crystal being who had demanded humanity's removal, sat in the passenger compartment looking much dimmer than before. The situation on our homeworld is becoming complicated, Felnoth admitted. Its voice sounded strained and tired. Our computation systems are failing and we cannot fix them. The harmonic algorithms that your people developed were apparently more important to our civilization than we understood. Martinez kept his face blank and professional. That is unfortunate. Have you asked the species who replaced us for help? The mathematicians from other species lack the necessary creative thinking patterns. They can keep existing systems running, but they cannot adapt them when new challenges arise. On the bridge, Lieutenant Karen Hayes listened to distress signals, coming from all over the galaxy. In just 1 week, they had recorded over 300 requests for human assistance. Each message offered more desperate terms than the last. The aliens were learning that removing humans from the galaxy was like removing a vital organ from a living body. Everything had been connected in ways they never understood. Human innovations had become part of the foundation that their entire civilization rested on. President Charles Walker sat in his office on Earth, reading reports from across the galaxy. The aliens who had celebrated forcing humanity out were now secretly begging for human help, but they still would not admit their mistake publicly. Ambassador Zethkara had arrived on Earth under cover of darkness 3 days ago. She represented a group within the Hive Collective that was ready to break away from the official policy. Our food systems are collapsing, she had admitted during their secret meeting. Without human genetic knowledge and innovation, we face mass starvation within 2 cycles of our sun. Walker had listened carefully to her desperate proposal for a private arrangement that would bring some humans back to Hive space as advisors. The rest of the Galactic Council would not be told about it, but Zethkara was not the only one making secret deals. Similar meetings were happening with representatives from almost every major alien species. They all wanted the same thing: human knowledge, human innovation, and human problem-solving abilities. Dr. Rachel Cooper headed the xenobiology department and was documenting every request. They are offering territorial concessions, technology transfers, and enormous payments, she reported to the cabinet. But they all want our people back in their space, solving their problems. The irony was clear to everyone. The galaxy had forced humanity to leave because they were too successful, too innovative, and too good at finding solutions. But in doing so, they had removed the very thing that made their civilization work. 1 year had passed since humans were forced to leave the galaxy, and everything was falling apart faster than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council building, which had once been the symbol of unity and cooperation among the species, now sat mostly empty. Many species had stopped sending representatives because they were too busy dealing with crises at home. The council meetings that did happen were full of angry arguments and blame. Each species pointed fingers at the others, claiming that someone else was responsible for the disasters happening across the galaxy. No one wanted to admit that removing humans had been a terrible mistake. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, a powerful human warship hidden in the shadow of a planet that had no sun. Long-range sensors showed him the destruction happening throughout the galaxy. Another Galactic Council fleet had just been destroyed by the Void Raiders, who had grown so bold that they now attacked core worlds instead of just frontier colonies. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Greg Patterson from his communications station, "we are receiving a priority transmission from the Trilarian homeworld. It is encrypted with the highest-level diplomatic codes." The message appeared on the main screen and Morrison read it with growing amazement. High Chancellor Kriva, the leader of the entire Trilarian Federation, was personally begging for human help. "Admiral Morrison, the Trilarian Federation formally requests immediate military assistance. The Void Raiders are 3 days from our homeworld. Our defenses have completely failed. We are prepared to offer full restoration of human territorial rights in exchange for military aid." Commander Nicole Ward looked up from her tactical display. "How many ships do we have in position to help them?" "The 7th Fleet is 12 hours away," Morrison replied. "Admiral Stevens has been keeping them on standby for exactly this kind of situation." Before Morrison could make a decision about helping the Trilarians, another priority message arrived. This one came from the Supreme Queen of the Hive Collective, then another message from the Crystalline Concordat. Within 1 hour, every major galactic power was sending desperate pleas for human intervention. On Earth, President Walker called an emergency cabinet meeting. The room was filled with his most trusted advisors, all of them looking tired from months of managing the galactic crisis from a distance. "The Galactic Council's authority has completely collapsed," reported Secretary of State Julia Martinez. "Individual species are breaking the ban on human contact and requesting bilateral agreements with us directly. But there is still a strong faction that opposes any human return." Director Brooks pulled up intelligence reports on the large screens around the room. "Our people who stayed behind in hiding report widespread civil unrest on 12 worlds. There are food shortages, infrastructure, failures, and security breakdowns everywhere. The galaxy is literally destroying itself." Vice President Andrew Foster asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Do we help them, knowing that they will probably turn on us again once this crisis passes?" Walker looked around the room at his advisors. These were good people who had worked hard to build relationships with alien species, only to see all their work destroyed by fear and jealousy. "The question is not whether they deserve our help. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we let billions of innocent people die because their leaders made bad decisions." The decision was unanimous. Operation Lifeline would begin immediately. But helping the galaxy would not be simple. The humans who had gone into hiding reported that the situation was much worse than even the desperate government messages indicated. On the Hive worlds, entire cities were rioting because there was no food. The complicated bioagricultural systems that had fed billions of insects for generations had failed without human genetic engineering support. Dr. Amanda Foster had moved her research team to a new hidden base closer to the crisis zones. Her job was to assess which problems could be fixed quickly and which would take years to repair. "The agricultural collapse is the most immediate threat," she reported to Earth. "But the infrastructure failures are going to kill just as many people if we do not act fast." The crystal beings were facing a different but equally deadly crisis. Their entire civilization was based on quantum computation systems that had been enhanced with human innovations over decades. Without these systems, they could not control their cities, their transportation, or even their basic life support systems. Commander Elena Price led a secret mission to Crystalis Prime. Her team of engineers worked around the clock to repair the failing quantum computers. "The damage is extensive," she reported back to Admiral Morrison. "It will take months to fully restore their systems, and that is only if we can get more people and equipment here." The snake people of the Coil Empire were having their own problems. Their space fleet, which had once been the most feared military force in the galaxy, was mostly grounded because their ships could not navigate properly. The complex stellar cartography systems that humans had developed were failing, leaving their pilots lost in space. Captain Tony Mitchell led a small team of human navigators who secretly boarded Coil Empire ships to help them find their way home. "Their pilots are excellent," he reported, "but they never learned how to read the navigation systems that humans built. They just trusted that the computers would tell them where to go." The Blue Giants were facing massive unemployment as their factories shut down one by one. These huge beings were incredibly strong and could build amazing structures, but they could not understand the delicate electronic control systems that humans had integrated into their industrial processes. Meanwhile, the Void Raiders were taking advantage of the chaos to expand their territory. Without human patrol fleets to stop them, the pirates had grown from small bands of thieves into organized armies that controlled entire sectors of space. The most dangerous Void Raider leader was known only as the Black Admiral. This mysterious figure commanded over 200 warships and had declared himself ruler of the Outer Rim territories. His forces were now threatening core worlds that had been safe for centuries. President Walker received a personal message from the Black Admiral that made his blood run cold. "Tell the humans that if they return to the galaxy, we will destroy every ship they send. The galaxy belongs to us now." But the human response was swift and devastating. Admiral Morrison led a combined fleet of 50 ships in a surprise attack on the main Void Raider base. The battle lasted only 3 hours, and when it was over, the Black Admiral was dead and his fleet was scattered. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. For the first time in months, alien worlds had hoped that the chaos might end. Zeth Kara sent another secret message to President Walker. "The Hive Collective is prepared to formally apologize for our actions and request the immediate return of human assistance. We cannot survive much longer without your help." Similar messages arrived from every major species, except one. The Crystal beings were still too proud to officially ask for help, even though they were secretly working with human engineers to repair their systems. Walker made his decision. "We will help them, but this time it will be on our terms. The galaxy forced us out once. We will not give them the chance to do it again." 18 months after the forced exodus, the galaxy had reached its breaking point. The Outer Rim territories had become a lawless wasteland where pirate fleets ruled with violence and fear. 3 different trade wars had broken out as desperate species fought over the few remaining stable trade routes. The carefully built civilization that had taken thousands of years to create was crumbling in just over a year. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the hidden human base, built inside a massive asteroid. Around him, dozens of screens showed the destruction happening across the galaxy. Entire star systems had gone dark as their infrastructure failed. Ships drifted helplessly through space because their navigation systems no longer worked. Colonies that had thrived for centuries were now sending out desperate distress calls. "Sir," Lieutenant Greg Patterson called out from his communications station, "we are receiving priority transmissions from every major homeworld in the galaxy. They are all asking for immediate military assistance." Morrison walked over to look at the messages. Each one was more desperate than the last. The Trilarian Federation reported that Void Raider fleets were only 3 days away from their capital world. The Hive Collective begged for help as their food riots turned into full civil war. Even the proud crystal beings had finally swallowed their pride and formally requested human intervention. "How many ships do we have available for immediate deployment?" Morrison asked his tactical officer. Commander Nicole Ward checked her displays. "The 7th Fleet is in position near the Trilarian border. Admiral Stevens has been keeping them ready for exactly this situation. The 3rd Fleet can reach Hive space in 18 hours. The 5th Fleet is already secretly operating in Crystal territory." Morrison made his decision quickly. "Send Admiral Stevens to help the Trilarians immediately. Order the 3rd Fleet to begin relief operations in Hive space. And tell Admiral Cooper to stop hiding and openly assist the crystal beings." On Earth, President Walker faced the most important decision in human history. The emergency cabinet had been in continuous session for 3 days as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Every few hours brought news of another disaster, another collapse, another desperate plea for help. "The situation is beyond critical," reported Secretary of State Julia Martinez. The Galactic Council has officially dissolved. Individual species are breaking all treaties and making separate peace agreements with anyone who will help them. The entire galactic order has collapsed. Director Brooks pulled up intelligence reports that painted a grim picture. Our embedded agents report widespread starvation on hive worlds, complete infrastructure collapse on crystal planets, and military defeats on every frontier. The galaxy is not just falling apart economically, it is literally dying. Vice President Andrew Foster asked the crucial question that everyone was thinking. If we help them now, what guarantee do we have that they will not turn on us again once the crisis passes? These are the same species that forced us out barely 2 years ago. Walker stood up and walked to the large window that showed the Earth below. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness, representing cities full of humans who had been forced to abandon their homes in the stars. The question is not whether they deserve our forgiveness. The question is whether we can stand by and watch. Billions of innocent people die because their leaders made terrible decisions. The room fell silent as everyone considered the moral weight of the decision. Finally, Walker turned back to face his advisors. We are going to help them. But this time, we do it on our terms. The decision was unanimous, but the conditions were non-negotiable. Humanity would return to the galaxy, but as the dominant power. The old Galactic Council was dead. A new order would be built with human leadership at its center. Operation Lifeline began within hours. Human fleets that had been hidden throughout the galaxy suddenly appeared and began rescue operations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. In Mita-Dundonin, the Trilarian system, Admiral Stevens arrived just as Void Raider ships entered the outer planets. The battle was swift and decisive. Human ships, with their superior technology and tactics, destroyed the pirate fleet in less than 4 hours. The grateful Trilarians immediately offered to surrender their sovereignty to human protection. On hive worlds where riots had turned cities into battlegrounds, human relief ships arrived with food and medical supplies. Dr. Amanda Foster led teams of genetic engineers who began the complex work of repairing the collapsed agricultural systems. Within days, food production began to increase, and the riots started to calm. The crystal beings received help, whether they wanted it or not. Human engineering teams openly took control of the failing quantum computation systems and began repairs. Commander Elena Price established a permanent human presence on Crystalis Prime, with the authority to override any local decisions. But the most dramatic intervention came in the Outer Rim, where the Void Raiders had established their criminal empire. Admiral Morrison personally led a massive fleet of over 300 human warships in a campaign to destroy the pirate threat once and for all. The war against the Void Raiders lasted 6 months, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human ships were faster, better armed, and commanded by officers with centuries of combat experience. One by one, the pirate strongholds fell to human assault. The final battle took place at the asteroid fortress that the Raiders had built as their capital. Morrison himself led the boarding party that captured the remaining pirate leaders. As he stood in the command center of the defeated fortress, he sent a message to every corner of the galaxy. This is Admiral Morrison of the Terran Federation. The Void Raider threat has been eliminated. Human forces now control all major space lanes and will guarantee safe passage for legitimate trade and travel. Any attempt to resume piracy will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. The response from across the galaxy was immediate. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly offered to work together under human leadership. Trade routes that had been abandoned for months reopened with human naval protection. Communication networks that had failed were rebuilt with human technology. But perhaps the most significant change was political. The old Galactic Council had been based on the idea that all species were equal partners. The new system would be based on acknowledged human supremacy, but with benevolent protection for all member species. President Walker addressed the galaxy from the rebuilt council chambers on Luna. Behind him sat representatives from over 40 species, but it was clear who held the real authority. The galaxy has learned an important lesson. Walker began his historic speech. Cooperation requires leadership. Diversity requires coordination. and civilization requires the wisdom to recognize which species can provide both. Zethkara, representing what remained of the Hive Collective, spoke for all the assembled delegates. Humanity has proven that they are not just another species in the galaxy. They are the species that the galaxy cannot survive without. We accept human leadership gratefully and permanently. As Walker looked out at the assembled representatives, he felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Humanity had not wanted to rule the galaxy. They had only wanted to be part of it. But the other species had forced this outcome through their own fear and jealousy. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone, but in trying to remove them, they had discovered that humans were not just helpful neighbors. They had become the essential foundation that held galactic civilization together. Now there would be no question about humanity's place in the galaxy. They would never be asked to leave again. 2 years after the Exodus began, Admiral Jake Morrison stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But everything had changed. The room that had once been filled with proud alien representatives demanding humanity's removal was now half empty and quiet. Several species had collapsed entirely and no longer existed as spacefaring civilizations. Others had withdrawn from galactic affairs to focus on rebuilding their shattered worlds. The few delegates who remained looked tired, defeated, and desperate. Morrison wore the uniform of the new Galactic Defense Force, with human insignia clearly visible on his shoulders. Behind him stood President Walker and his new cabinet, including Secretary of Galactic Affairs Dr. Laura Thompson. The power dynamics had completely reversed from the last time humans had stood in this chamber. The Terran Federation has carefully reviewed your collective request for readmission to the galactic community, Morrison began, his voice carrying the authority of the galaxy's dominant power. We are prepared to accept your request, but under new terms that reflect the reality of our current situation. The new terms were simple but revolutionary. Humanity would receive permanent leadership positions in all galactic institutions. Human colonies would have complete sovereignty with no restrictions on expansion into unclaimed space. Most importantly, any future attempt to exclude humanity from galactic affairs would result in immediate and permanent withdrawal of all human protection and services. Zethkara, representing the remnants of the Hive Collective, spoke for the assembled delegates. Her once proud voice now carried the humility of a species that had learned the cost of their arrogance. Your terms are completely acceptable. We have learned the true price of our mistakes. But the real changes went much deeper than politics or treaties. The entire structure of galactic civilization had been rebuilt around human leadership and innovation. Captain Lisa Barnes, now promoted to Admiral, oversaw the new Galactic Defense Initiative. Every major military doctrine throughout the galaxy was now based on human tactical principles. The early warning networks that protected civilized worlds from pirates and raiders had been expanded and improved far beyond their original capabilities. Dr. Amanda Foster led the new Galactic Agricultural Consortium, with human genetic engineering techniques helping to restore food production on dozens of worlds. The techniques that humans had developed were not just repairing the damage caused by their absence, they were actually improving crop yields beyond what they had been before the crisis. The economic recovery was remarkable, but it was built on a foundation of acknowledged human leadership. Every major trade route was protected by human naval forces. Every important communication network was maintained by human technicians. Every critical infrastructure system incorporated human innovations and required human expertise to operate properly. Commander Elena Price had established permanent human oversight centers on every major alien homeworld. These centers had the authority to override local decisions if they threatened galactic stability. The crystal beings who had once been so proud of their independence now gratefully accepted human management of their quantum computation systems. The Snake People of the Coil Empire had completely reorganized their military around human command structures. Their ships now carried human navigators and their tactics were taught by human instructors. The Blue Giants had converted their massive factories to human-designed production systems that were far more efficient than anything they had built before. 6 months after the new order was established, President Walker addressed the reformed Galactic Assembly from the joint headquarters on Luna. The building had been designed as a symbol of cooperation between species, but the reality was clear to everyone who saw it. The human delegation sat at the center of the assembly hall, with alien representatives arranged in a circle around them. The galaxy has learned an important lesson about the nature of cooperation, Walker said as he looked out at the assembled delegates. True partnership requires honest recognition of each species' strengths and limitations. Diversity is valuable, but it must be organized and directed to be effective. The speech was broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Polls showed that over 90% of all galactic citizens supported the new human-led order. Even among species that had originally opposed human expansion, support for human leadership was strong. Admiral Morrison smiled as he watched the broadcast from his office aboard the flagship of the Galactic Defense Force. The ship that had once been hidden in the shadows was now proudly stationed at the center of the galaxy's capital system. Around him, officers from dozens of different species worked together under human command. The transformation was complete, but it had come at a cost. Humanity had never wanted to rule the galaxy. They had only wanted to be part of it as equals. The forced exodus had changed everything. The aliens who had feared human success had guaranteed human dominance. Dr. Rachel Cooper, now the Director of Galactic Integration, worked from her office on Earth to coordinate the ongoing process of rebuilding galactic civilization. Her department managed thousands of human experts who were stationed throughout the galaxy, ensuring that critical systems continued to function properly. The integration process is proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported to President Walker during their weekly meeting. Most species have fully accepted human oversight and are actively requesting additional human assistance with their local problems. The irony was not lost on any of the human leadership. The species that had once seen humans as an infestation now competed with each other to attract human attention and investment. Worlds that had once banned human immigration now offered generous incentives to encourage human settlement. Captain Troy Martinez, now Admiral Martinez, commanded the diplomatic corps that managed relationships with alien governments. His job had evolved from carrying secret messages to openly negotiating treaties that formalized human authority throughout the galaxy. The transformation has been remarkable, he reported to the cabinet. Species that were bitter enemies for centuries are now working together under human mediation. The old territorial disputes have been resolved through human arbitration. We have achieved a level of galactic peace that has never existed before. But perhaps the most significant change was in how aliens viewed humanity itself. The old fears about human expansion and innovation had been replaced by recognition that these qualities were beneficial for everyone. Human colonies were no longer seen as threats to alien sovereignty. They were seen as centers of progress and prosperity that improved life for all nearby species. Lieutenant Karen Hayes, now Commander Hayes, led the new galactic communication network that connected every inhabited world with instantaneous communication. The network used human technology to provide services that no alien species had been able to achieve on their own. As President Walker concluded his address to the Assembly, he reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. "We did not choose this role," he said quietly. "It was forced upon us by circumstances beyond our control. But we accept the responsibility that comes with leadership, and we promise to use our authority wisely and fairly." The applause that followed was genuine and enthusiastic. Representatives from species that had once demanded humanity's exile now competed to express their gratitude and loyalty. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone, but in achieving that goal, they had discovered something that changed everything. Humans were not just another species that happened to be successful. They were the keystone species that held galactic civilization together. Remove them, and everything collapsed. Include them as partners, and everything improved. Place them in leadership, and everything flourished. The species that had once seen humans as a threat had learned that humans were actually their salvation. They had not been conquered by human weapons or overwhelmed by human numbers. They had been quietly, thoroughly, and completely integrated into every aspect of their civilization by human ingenuity, adaptability, and the simple human drive to help others solve their problems. The galaxy had wanted humanity gone. Instead, they had ensured that humanity would never be asked to leave again. In trying to exclude humans from galactic civilization, they had made human leadership of that civilization inevitable.